Welcome to today's Explainer. Look, I want you to step into my lecture hall for just a second. And ironically enough, I want you to put your pens down. Today, we are going through a true masterclass on how to actually retain the dense, complex information you're consuming. Because let's be real, if you've ever finished reading a heavy chapter or sat through a massive hour-long presentation, only to realize an hour later that you have absolutely no idea what you just took in, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're laying out the definitive blueprint for remembering everything you read. I think that's just rubbish. I think it's pseudo-work. Now, this is a direct, totally unfiltered quote from our source material today, and it aggressively challenges the exact study habits you have probably relied on for years. You know what I'm talking about, all that careful color-coded highlighting, that meticulous underlining of practically every other sentence. Yeah, our source literally calls it pseudo-work. It feels like you're studying, right? But you aren't. We're going to deconstruct exactly why that is, and more importantly, we're going to give you the tools to actually fix it. So here's our syllabus for today. 1. The highlighting illusion. 2. Recognition versus spontaneous recall. 3. The read, think, write method. 4. Attaching mental memory hooks. And finally, 5. True expertise. All right, dive right in. Section 1, the highlighting illusion and why those old habits are completely failing you. Here's the hard truth. The very things we think make us quote-unquote good students are actually sabotaging our memory retention. Taking notes right in the middle of a lecture, highlighting text, underlining sentences. If you are frantically taking notes during a presentation, you aren't actually listening to it. Your brain is basically acting like a mindless transcription machine. You're just moving words from the speaker's mouth directly onto your paper or your laptop without ever passing them through your critical thinking faculties. You aren't processing the information, you're just recording it. So the rule here is incredibly simple, but I promise it completely flips the traditional learning model on its head. Listen to the damn lecture. Taking notes should only happen after the lecture is over or, after a specific segment is finished. And why is that? Because delaying your note-taking forces you to actually practice the act of remembering. You have to reconstruct those ideas in your mind from scratch. And that right there, that is exactly how you build real, long-lasting memory. Moving on to Section 2. Recognition versus spontaneous recall. This is the cognitive theory behind why the highlighting fails. See, we routinely confuse recognition with recall. It's a classic trap. When you look back at a page just dripping in neon yellow highlighter, you get this warm, fuzzy feeling of familiarity. Your brain goes, yes, I've seen this before. But listen, that is just recognition, and it is a total false comfort. Spontaneous recall, on the other hand, is the complex, active, and absolutely necessary cognitive workout of pulling that information out of your brain without looking at the page. When you just highlight, you bypass that struggle entirely. But as any veteran professor will tell you, that struggle, that is where the learning actually happens. Which brings us to Section 3, the read, think, write method. This is the actionable part of the lab today. Okay, here is your exact step-by-step guide for summarizing a dense chapter. Step 1, read a paragraph or an essay. Really depends on how dense the material is. Just read it. Don't touch a pen. Step 2 is the magic bullet. Close the book. Literally close it. Do not skip this. Closing the book is the mandatory physical trigger for true retention because you are cutting off your access to the source material. Step 3, think about what you just read. Actually process it. And finally, Step 4, write down what you remember, but in your own words. You aren't just blindly listing disconnected facts here. You are forcing your brain to make sense of how those concepts connect. Separate reading from note-taking. I really want to pause here and let this fundamental rule sink in for a second. You simply cannot do both simultaneously and expect to do them effectively. Reading is the act of ingesting the information. Note-taking, when done correctly with the book totally closed, well, that's the act of testing whether you actually digested it. Let's step it up to the advanced seminar. Section 4, attaching mental memory hooks. Our source makes a crucial point here. To recall information extemporaneously, meaning you can just speak freely about a really complex topic without constantly checking your notes, you have to attach little memory hooks to the data. When you finish reading and you close that book, hit yourself with these deep reflection questions. Ask, how does this relate to ideas I already know? What is its significance to this other concept we talked about? Do I even believe what the author is saying here? How might I criticize it? This is exactly what an active, reflecting brain sounds like. If you're reading a brutal chapter on macroeconomic policy, you don't just memorize a textbook definition of inflation. No, you ask, wait, how does this relate to the price of the groceries I just bought this morning? You are actively building out this massive interconnected web of knowledge.
And that brings us to the climax of the whole process. Section 5, True Expertise and Mastery. I absolutely love this piece of advice from the source material. Reformulate the sentence so that now it's your sentence, man. This right here is the absolute pinnacle of the exercise. Reading a sentence and just writing down that exact same sentence from memory, still entirely useless. But when you close the book and you reformulate it using your own vocabulary, your own unique examples, and those mental hooks we just talked about, that proves you deeply, genuinely understand it. It stops being someone else's words on a page and literally becomes a permanent, integrated part of your own intellect.
So I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. The very next time you sit down with a dense book or you sit in on a complicated lecture, I want you to check your own habits. Ask yourself, are you just recognizing information to feel productive? Or are you actually practicing the necessary spontaneous struggle of remembering? Do yourself a favor, drop the highlighter, close the book, and start building true expertise. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go out there, do the hard work of spontaneous recall, and I'll catch you next time.